Story 1. Female porcupines are only fertile for 8 to 12 hours a year and give birth to a single porcupet. Their fecundity means if you ever see one in the wild, appreciate it. Story 2. Laser stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, but as they were developing them, they realized they don't actually amplify. They oscillate. However, they can't fix that because then they'd be losers. Story 3. Polar bears are black. They have dark black skin. Only their fur is clear, appearing white, which allows them to camouflage. Their black skin helps retain heat from the sun while also fighting harmful ultraviolet rays. Story 4. Canadian's goalie Jacques Plante broke his nose during a game in 1959 and refused to continue playing unless he could wear a makeshift mask. The coach allowed it as long as he took off the mask when his nose stopped bleeding. Plante wore the mask for the rest of the game and they won. Plante then wore the mask for the next 17 games. The coach didn't want him wearing the mask, but since they won 18 games in a row, he allowed it. On the 19th game, Plante didn't wear the mask, and they broke their winning streak. Plante would wear the mask every game after, and the Canadians won the Stanley Cup that year. Story 5. My friend from Mexico City told me today that the main cathedral in Mexico City is sinking. I knew that already, but apparently that is causing the ruins of the Templo Mayor, the site of the main pyramids of Tenochtitlan, to rise. They call it the Revenge of the Mexica, also known as the Aztecs. Story 6. There's a tribe in Brazil that doesn't use numbers. They also don't keep a record of history or past stories. They're only concerned about their lives now. Story 7. Female bats of some species are able to store a male's sperm inside their reproductive tract for several months. In this way, they can mate in the autumn but conceive in the spring, thus avoiding raising young in the middle of winter. In fact, long-term sperm storage is fairly common in reptiles, fish, birds, and amphibians. Some animals can store viable sperm for years. Story 8. The flapper fashion of the 1920s was greatly influenced by ancient Egyptian fashion. The discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922 reignited people's love affair with ancient Egypt. Story 9. The United States dime, the 10-cent piece, is the only U.S. coin that does not have the word cent or dollar on it. Apparently, you're either supposed to just know that a dime is 10 cents, or there really are two subdivisions of U.S. currency: dollar, dime, cent. 1 cent, 5 cents, 1 dime, quarter dollar, half dollar, $1. Story 10. Amber is the rarest gem in the universe. There are whole planets and asteroids floating around out there with an abundance of diamonds and other gems, but amber is only found on Earth. This is because it requires trees to form. We often forget that trees are beings in themselves and that they evolved to live on Earth under certain conditions, just like us and every other animal. There is no guarantee at all that trees, as we know them, evolved on other planets, and as far as we have been able to see, no other planetoid has ever been detected with trees. Thus, amber is the rarest gem of all, confined to one planet in the known universe, ours. Story 11. Today I learned that honeybees can recognize human faces. Like, imagine being a bee and being like, "Oh, that's Dave from accounting." Pretty sure they'd recognize me as that idiot who runs away flailing every time they come near. Though. Story 12. Billions of tiny zinc particles explode from the surface of mammalian eggs when a sperm cell touches down, releasing light at the moment of conception. The more brilliant the light, the higher the quality of the egg and its ability to develop into an embryo. Story 13. The average person has anywhere between 2 to 5 pounds of bacteria in or on their body. The numbers can vary, but that's how much an individual's microbiome typically weighs. Story 14. Charles J. Guiteau, the man who assassinated the 20th American president, James Garfield, was found to be suffering from phimosis and schizophrenia. Phimosis, for those who don't know, is a condition where the foreskin can't retract, leading to the buildup of smegma and other substances. He had a painful condition for his whole life. Story 15. The United Kingdom Dennis the Menace and the United States Dennis the Menace were released on the same day. It was not planned, and there was no idea about the other. It was a complete coincidence. Both were on different media formats, but still mind blown. Story 16. Tom Hanks has a brother, Jim. His physical resemblance to his brother allowed him to act as a body double for him in scenes in Forrest Gump. Due to his vocal similarity, and with his brother Tom's personal recommendation, he often substitutes for Tom in the role of Sheriff Woody in various Toy Story video games and spin-offs. Jim did location work for Forrest Gump when he was running across the country. The whole Forrest running scene was set to be cut from the film. Zemeckis met with Tom and suggested they fund that whole part themselves. Story 17. The perceived direction of the flow of time is dependent on your language. English, French, Spanish, etc. Time runs left to right. The past is to the left of now, the future to the right. Japanese traditionally write top to bottom, thus the beginning is at the top, the conclusion at the bottom. Arabic and a few others go backward when compared to English. The future is to the left, the beginning to the right. Story 18. Humans are supposedly bioluminescent or glow in the dark due to photon emission. However, the light emitted by the human skin is very mild and undetectable to the human eye. A study published in 1990 estimated the photon rates to be around 170 to 600 photons per second per square centimeter. Story 19. That you can substitute cleaning strength white vinegar for fabric softener in your washing machine. It's cheaper and much more environmentally friendly and skin friendly. Vinegar softens, kills bacteria, and removes odors. Story 20. The human anus can stretch up to 7 inches before taking damage, and a raccoon can fit into spaces of 4 inches. Therefore, you can take almost 2 whole raccoons up your ass. Story 21. Most people don't really grasp how far apart 1 million and 1 billion are. 1 million seconds is roughly 12 days. 1 billion seconds, over 32 years. The difference between a millionaire and a billionaire. About $1 billion. Story 22. Shrimp need an air pump in their tank because they can prematurely die without it. I just put it in, and they went from being huddled in a corner with little movement to swimming happily. Story 23. Did you know that there is a species of jellyfish, Turritopsis dohrnii, known as the mortal jellyfish because it can revert to its juvenile form after reaching maturity? This cycle can theoretically go on indefinitely, making it biologically immortal. Nature has some serious tricks up its sleeve. Story 24. I recently learned that honey never spoils. Archaeologists found 3,000-year-old honey in ancient Egyptian tombs. So, if you ever feel bad about your expired yogurt, just remember you could have a sweet tooth for history. Story 25. That employers can write off employees' wages as necessary and mandatory business expenses. Then they pay taxes on the gains the employee made the company at a smaller percentage than the vast majority of us. Story 26. That the Queen's horse, Obelisk, would lure birds with oats or nuts, just to stomp them to death when they approached. Well, maybe not such a fun fact. Story 27. I've known for a while that in our solar system we have 3 to 4 planets with the right conditions for diamond rain. Additionally, Jupiter's moon Titan has around 100 times more natural oil than Earth does. Story 28. Actor R.J. Mitt, Walter White Jr. in Breaking Bad, was adopted. His adopted mom's name is Dinah Mitt. I'm not sure if that was her birth name and it's just a funny coincidence, or it's a nickname, or she legally changed it to that after she got married. Story 29. The feral horses on Assateague Island are not ponies. They are just small horses. They are descended from horses brought over by English settlers centuries ago, and their size has been stunted from generations of eating saltwater plants. Story 30. Wombats crush predators' heads with their rumps. They have cartilage-heavy backsides that have fewer nerves, and they crawl into their burrows to tempt a predator into attacking. When they do, they leave a small space for the predator's head to enter and then press it into the ground. Story 31. Helen Keller wasn't the only person with her suite of disabilities to do great things, but the reality of how society dealt with the disabled means that poorer and more vulnerable individuals were abused, institutionalized, and otherwise erased from history. Story 32. I just learned today that penguins are not actually penguins. Penguins went extinct in the 19th century, and the penguins we know today are only called that because they look like the extinct ones. Blew my mind. Story 33. In ancient times, farmers would dance and jump on brooms, pitchforks, and poles during a full moon to encourage their crops to grow. This pagan ritual may have been inspired by the association between witches and brooms today. Story 34. Rice farmers usually raise ducks for industry because ducks don't eat rice. Instead, they eat harmful bugs and creatures. Also, their poo is a great fertilizer. I love ducks. Story 35. There is an Arctic squirrel that can completely freeze itself. When it thaws out, it has a mental state similar to a dementia patient, but then completely recovers. Story 36. A time traveler from the future told me we're going to die from peanut butter. I asked him if it was some sort of allergy thing he meant. He told me, "No, man. The peanut butter will mutate and become sentient. It'll evolve and spread across the globe. The Earth will basically become one giant piece of bread." I asked him how he knew that. He told me he was from the future. I then asked him what happens to all the jelly. He looked at me in horror. "No, man. Humans become the jelly under the chunky peanut butter spread." I moved on with my night. I wasn't ready to hear more. Story 37. Apparently, sea otters hold hands when they sleep so they do not drift apart. I have been single long enough that I would hold hands with an otter at this point. Story 38. Apparently, the best theory we have for how New World monkeys made it to the Americas is due to some kind of natural raft that took monkeys across the ocean. It sounds implausible, but they observed one recently. We are talking about a span of hundreds of thousands of years for these ideal conditions to occur. Story 39. The second verse of Rihanna's hit song SOS, written by Evan Bogart, is made up entirely of song titles, specifically hits from the 80s, strung together to make sentences. He said he had no idea what he was doing when writing it and just thought it would be cool. I never knew until last week. Story 40. I recently learned an interesting fact about sleep and memory. It turns out that during sleep, the brain is not just resting, but actively working, processing, and rewriting memories. There are studies that show that the brain literally rehearses and reinforces new skills or knowledge during sleep. For example, if you have been learning to play the piano or memorizing new words, your brain reinforces these skills at night while you sleep by repeating them in an accelerated fashion. Another funny thing, it turns out that our brain sorts not only important moments but also decides what can be erased so as not to be overloaded with unnecessary information. Therefore, quality sleep has a direct impact on our ability to learn and memorize. Story 41. The casting of Supergiant Games composer and songwriter Darren Korb as Zagreus in the game Hades was a total accident. When the game was in early development, Korb had recorded lines for Zagreus to use as a placeholder so that the other developers could have a reference for game development. But the other staff members realized that Korb's semi-detached, unemotional way of acting the lines was perfect for Zagreus, a sarcastic character who is emotionally detached from the others within the underworld after learning that nearly everyone he knows was aware his real mother abandoned him and kept his lines in the game. Story 42. The church was a necessity so people can look at the world as a whole and see that there were still good things in it. Otherwise, human nature would ensure that there is only bad. But now that faith in the goodness of the church or religion is, for the most part, gone, now we're all out here like, we're kind of lost and directionless. I don't know. Fun facts and stuff. Just thought I'd share what I learned from this book I'm reading. I'm an atheist, by the way, but there's some heavy truth to that. We just need something to fill the same role the church filled in the past, and I feel like a lot of people's problems will be solved. Story 43. I found this out while watching some airport security shows, mostly Australian border security, but they have some on the United States as well. Many countries that have to review packages from one country to another can get permission from their federal postal service if they suspect something on the declaration card is off. The packages have to go through those X-ray systems to check if the items sent are the correct items on the declaration. They have caught many smugglers that way. I had to handle something similar when I ordered a computer part from Canada, a neighboring country. Yes, it went through inspections from both Canada and the United States to ensure the part one was getting was indeed a computer part. It was a graphics card, by the way. Story 44. There is so much spewing of hatred during this time right before any election in government itself. Government itself should disembark. We should protect ourselves, stand by ourselves, and not spew hatred and discontent. Story 45. I learned from Donald Trump on Monday that the United States economy is doing brilliantly, and he should get the credit. I learned from Donald Trump on Wednesday that the United States economy is doing terribly, and Kamala Harris should get the blame. Story 46. One fun fact is that honey never spoils. Archaeologists have found pots of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that are over 3,000 years old and still perfectly edible. It is fascinating how its natural properties help preserve it. Story 47. Indiana Jones was originally named Indiana Smith by George Lucas. Spielberg made the decision to change the last name to avoid confusion with a Steve McQueen movie from the 1960s called Nevada Smith. Story 48. For Kiefer Sutherland to return for Young Guns 2, he insisted that his character Doc had to die. The real Doc actually lived till his 80s in Texas. Story 49. I just learned that honey never spoils. Archaeologists have found pots of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that are over 3,000 years old and still perfectly edible. So basically, if the apocalypse hits, I'm hoarding honey. Story 50. The white Galaxy Buds 2 Pro have a different coating compared to the other Galaxy Buds 2 Pro models, which all have peeling issues with their soft touch material.